course, one of our co-organizers. Of course, we had previously asked all our guests to bring their PDFs in pen drives, but obviously things usually tend to work the opposite way. So for tomorrow, for those of you who are here and have to present tomorrow, we please do ask you to bring your pen drive with your PDF or PowerPoint. Thank you.
Thank you. I represent Palindrome. My pleasure to be here. Palindrome is a dance company based in Weimar, Germany. And we don't make so many performances in the last few years because we've been focusing instead on a project to make a device for persons with disabilities that turns movement into music.
Als die Frau Dietz uns das Projekt vorgestellt hat, da war ich doch sehr skeptisch. Jetzt habe ich das heute gesehen und ich bin total begeistert, weil das sehr bewegend war, was unsere Schüler leisten können, obwohl wir sie ständig sehen, jeden Tag, und wissen, wie schlau sie eigentlich sind. Haben wir einfach in dieser Woche nochmal sehen können, dass sie wirklich Dinge können, die einfach andere Sachen erfordern, als wahnsinnig toll Mathematik zu können oder Fremdsprachen zu können, sondern wo musikalische Intelligenz oder emotionale Intelligenz gefragt ist. Und das war einfach toll zu sehen.
Als ich das dann vorgemacht habe und die Kinder das dann selber nachmachen konnten, also dieser Ursache-Wirkungszusammenhang, den haben sie sehr schnell hergestellt. Es war einfach so, sie haben sich hier im Raum bewegt und haben gedacht, oh, da ist ein Ton, da ist ein Ton. Wenn ich nichts mache, passiert nichts. Und das war bei sehr vielen, dass sie das sehr schnell raus hatten und dann eben auch so zur Eigenaktivität dort veranlasst wurden. Im Laufe der Woche hat man dann gemerkt, auch als es dann in Kleingruppen ging, dass die Schüler sich dann viel mehr damit auseinandersetzen konnten. Es war einfach toll, das zu beobachten über die Woche. Also wie auch unsere schwerst mehrfach behinderten Schüler mit ganz geringen Armbewegungen dort also ein Klavier zum Klingen gebracht haben. So ganz berührungslos. Und das dann eben auch so mit vollstem Körper.
Zum Beispiel.
So this fellow is blind and in a wheelchair, and there are many sounds in the space, and he's looking for the sounds and playing the sounds with sometimes very small movements of the wheelchair, and able to orient himself through the space. So he's playing music and also orienting. He knows his position in the space because of the sounds he's making. Just want you to pay attention to his eyes. He doesn't have a lot of movement ability, and so he's playing piano not only with his head and hand movements, arm movements, but also with his eye movements. So you see how he phrased the ending. I mean, he said that he couldn't talk to me directly, but through his interpreters, he said that he always had wanted to play the piano, and this was the first time in his life that he could, right? Because it doesn't have finger movement, so it can be a powerful thing. Good. So now. I want to talk, the title of my talk is Coherent Mapping, and I certainly want to talk about that, but I wondered if I should... I'm sorry, how much time do I have? 10 minutes? 10? Fine. So, so what is mapping? Some of you know this term. Some of you work with it day in and day out. But to those of you for whom it is a new idea, mapping, simply put, is the idea when you're using interactive system like this. What does what? Is it my eye movements that play piano notes? Is it my larger body gestures that make the music louder or quieter? This idea of associating the body to parameters of sound or aspects of music. And there are many ways to do it, and it gets very complicated very quickly. And I want to try to emphasize the fact that this particular aspect of a quite complicated problem, which is that effective mapping, the systems that really give the mover the feeling that they're hearing their body, ones that work intuitively, systems that don't need explanation, tend to be, in a way, quite simple ones, right? So I move and I hear a sound. This is a very simple idea of mapping. Or I raise my arm, and what happens to the notes? They get higher. Well, higher notes are not higher. On a piano, they're more to the right, right? But there's nothing higher about higher notes, right? This is an idea we have that higher notes are higher, right? They're not. But this is so much in our feeling of music that it feels good that the notes go up when we go up. Now see, when you speak higher, your voice, the frequency of your voice goes up, but actually it's much more complicated than that. And the quality of the voice changes in many other ways. So, for example, if we want to make, just to take this as an example, that higher body means higher notes. To make a really good intuitive system, instead of just making the pitch go up, right, you might want to do a more complicated transformation of the sound that would imitate what the vocal cords, how the sound actually changes when you go up. It's not just higher, it has more, I don't know, I'm not an expert on the voice, but it has more air in it, and I certainly can't sing. You don't need to worry about that. But composers who work with electroacoustic music, they know how to shape sound in very complex ways. So they can make a sound not just higher pitched, but really higher, right? Seeming to be higher. So we look for, in some cases, very complicated ways to finally arrive at a simple, intuitive result. And maybe I can give a few more examples of how that works for us. So this may look like what we're trying to do, to turn movement into music. In fact, I'm hearing echoes, sorry. In fact, however, this is not quite our task. This is our task. Okay, what's the difference between this and this, right? This is a technical feat. There are many ways to do it, right? Doors open for you all the time today. There's many systems today that respond to our movement. Some of them are fun, right? We enjoy them. It's kind of a trick. This is something more sophisticated. What's the difference here? Well, dance is made up of many things, many parameters. It's complex, as is music. So to do an appropriate mapping of this, there are many ways and many permutations, many combinations of possible mappings. So how do you find your way? This has been the primary task of my professional life in the last 20 or 30 years. How do you find the way from something so complex as human movement and so complex as music to something that can work intuitively, to the point where I say, I'm hearing my hand and it's beautiful and it's musical, and now I hear my head, and now I hear my... How do we arrive at this simplicity? You know, walking is one of the most complicated movements of the body. It involves 200 muscles, and they have to contract in a very specific way. But we don't know anything about that. It's intuitive and it feels natural. So that's my model for our work. So I've tried to reduce, so I've managed to reduce mapping and motion tracking I group it into 4 different characteristics. I talked about activity yesterday, and these are the most important ones now. Hits is a bit more complicated. It's the idea of an action. You know, I do something, I hit a sound, right? So it's an action away from the body. I don't want this to make a sound, I want this to make a sound. It tends to be an action outward. So so this is a bit more complex, but anyway, this is how I break down a relatively complicated task into simple parts. We do activity tracking with a 2D sensor because it needs extremely low latency. Position requires a 3D sensor in order to extract the body from the background, and so on. So there's actually a number of data streams that we generate in each case. And in the end, we have, I think, 48 different streams of data in the system to hopefully arrive in the end at a system that seems to work intuitively. Okay, I'm finished.
Thank you, Robert. Well, we have now time for a few questions. Well, we don't have the time, but we should have it anyway. So if you want to ask some questions to the previous presenters, please do it now. If there would be no questions, then we will have 5 minutes break. So take that option also. Yes?
The last slide that you presented, I think that was really interesting because then you were talking about all these other technologies, emotion detection, clash detection, all of this. So where can we get more information about this and what are these technologies? And I mean, just to know more.
Well, I think next workshop will be a good opportunity for us to present a specific presentation on that application, for example. Yeah, because there are a lot of technologies, and it could be interesting to go into deep in all of them. Yeah.
What's his name? Robert, I would like to ask you about your device. How does it work technologically? Or what kind of software you use? You made a software, or is this open source, or whatever?
Okay, how does it work? Well, there's 2 cameras attached to a computer, and one of them is a 2D camera. I mean, what we think of as a video camera. It's perhaps higher resolution than most of the video cameras that you normally see, so it sees very small movements of the eye. And the other camera is a 3D depth sensor, time of flight technology it's called, and it measures the distance away. And I guess the nice trick there is we're not so much using the 3D camera so that you can move in 3 dimensions, because a 2D camera sees in 3 dimensions, right? You take a video and you're seeing a 3D world. You see movements in all directions. So our interest, the reason we use this 3D sensor, which is actually technically quite a challenge. It's the most challenging aspect of our work. The reason we like to use this 3D, the reason we're going through all of this trouble to attach a 3D sensor, the depth sensing, is so you can find the body and the shape of the body and where I am by erasing the background. So you tell the computer to look for everything 2 or 3 meters away, but everything more than 3 meters away, erase. So now you have very easily a way to say a body against a black background. And now I can see where the shape is and how the arms are extended. So it's a nice trick, because the only other way to do it is to have everybody get out of the picture, and then you take a photograph with nobody in the space, and then you go back in, and then something moves in the background and it goes crazy, and stop, everybody go out again. Oh, the sun has changed, the lighting conditions have changed, everybody go away, fresh background. This is how we've always done it. I know how to do this, but yeah, most people don't. So we want to make it very easy to use. So the software is being developed by Antonio Kamuri and his team in Fomos. It's a Linux, PD, open source community concept, development concept. Repeat your question.
So I'm just wondering, how does it compute the minutest eye movements? Because so the depth sensor is actually for something else, which is more volumetric and.
Right. So So it's the mixture of these two data streams that allow things like eye movement. In other words, the 3D sensor says where I am, and now we have a blob, and there's a head here somewhere, and now we use the 2D sensor to see such small things as eye movements. So the 2D and the 3D have to be synchronized, very carefully mapped together. The 2D camera has no trouble seeing blinks of an eye, even at 3 meters distance. We don't know what an eye is. We don't deal with such details. We don't try to say where's the left hand, where's the right hand. We're not looking for skeleton. We're not trying to say this is an eye. I don't care.
Actually, the note sort of changes. I mean, that was quite fascinating, that it can literally capture it at, even if you're at 2 meters or 3 meters away. I mean, that is really fascinating, yeah.
Yeah, and it's fun. I hope everybody gets a chance to try it sometime.
So, there's some... Is there a question there? No. So, if there are no more questions, we have 1 minute break. Una pausa de 1 minuto. So, because I know it will be 1 hour at least. So.